So the next reading I'm going to do is about the Pan American Games. So just as a little bit of a background, when we did the bid for the Pan American Games, there are two bid processes. One is to win the process to represent Canada in the big bid for all the Pan American countries, and then to win that one. So I'm going to talk about the Canadian bid. Now I see Don McKenzie is here. Where's Barbara Huck? Okay. So Don's there, Barbara's there. So everybody listen up. In early December of 1992, 1 week after the Grey Cup had been held in Toronto, and only 1 month after I had been elected, 4 city delegations were invited to make a presentation in Toronto to the Canadian Olympic Association, who would ultimately choose Canada's representative to the Pan Am Sports Organization for the 1999 Pan American Games. Who would have believed that 25 years after the 1967 Pan American Games, when I was a student volunteer, a driver for the Mexican soccer team in the 1967 Games, that I would be the mayor of Winnipeg and a member of the bid team for the 1999 Games. It was simply, again, one of those moments of awe. Yet here I was, just a month since I'd been elected in 1992, on my way to Toronto for the Canadian bid. I was overjoyed to be involved. It was a start of an amazing journey. There were actually 2 bids required to host the Pan American Games. First, our city, as I said, had to win the Canadian bid. And then the second bid would take place in the summer of 1994 in Guayaquil, Ecuador. The 1994 bid would involve 42 countries, including Canada, the United States, Mexico, a host of other countries in Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. According to the Pan American Games selection process, only 1 city per country was allowed to bid. 4 cities were in the running for the Canadian bid: Edmonton, Sherbrooke, Quebec, Toronto, and Winnipeg. There were rumors that the provinces of Alberta and Quebec were putting all their energies into their Olympic bids for Calgary and Quebec City. So that left Toronto as our main competitor. Then in late November, Toronto hosted the 1992 Grey Cup, and it was not as nearly successful as the Canadian Football League had wanted it to be. Torontonians were unabashedly apathetic, the stands were half empty, and there were fewer pre-games events than usual. They even canceled the Grey Cup parade in Toronto because there was no enthusiasm for it. Fortuitously for us, Winnipeg had hosted an incredible 1991 Grey Cup, even though it was 30 below. Okay, do we all remember that one? So it boded very well for Winnipeg. Over a 2-day period at this bid process, a number of breakfasts, dinners, and receptions were organized for the bid committees of each of the cities. All of these events were wonderful opportunities to mingle with members of other delegations and the Canadian Olympic Association. We arrived into Toronto late on a Friday evening. Each city had its hospitality room, and on Saturday morning, we immediately set up the Winnipeg room. While our 3 contenders set up typical wine and cheese format for their hospitality rooms, Winnipeg did something a little different. A few weeks before the bid, members of our committee had asked many bakeries in Winnipeg if they would create special desserts for us to take to Toronto. What transpired was nothing short of extraordinary. Over 30 bakeries responded, and off we went to Toronto with boxes of cakes and pastries, some with the city logo on it, the province of Manitoba crest, others with our Pan Am Bid Committee logo, all beautifully decorated and all unique. Committee members hand carried these decadent desserts onto the plane to go from Winnipeg to Toronto. I remember Penny McMillan. Penny, where are you? She's somewhere here. Penny McMillan was head of Tourism Winnipeg, so Penny was on one side of the aisle. She had one seat. The next two seats had desserts seat belted in, and then across the aisle, two seats, desserts seat belted in, and then me. And that's how we flew down to Toronto along with the team. Once at the hotel, we placed them on the outside balcony. It was December, so they would stay nice and cool out there. Our team proved to be excellent hosts. Our hospitality room superbly showcased our city and our province. One of our committee members, the late Harvey Nairn, had gone into the streets of Toronto to find a real Christmas tree, which we then put in our hospitality room and decorated and put beside the desserts. We set up tables that featured all the decadent desserts, and we waited in anticipation for the COA delegates to arrive. Each committee member wore a white long-sleeve sweater and our Pan Am logo around the upper right shoulder. All of us were in a cheerful mood and couldn't wait to greet our guests. Gabrielle and Marcel Fauré, representatives of the Festival de Voyageurs, Winnipeg's annual French-Canadian festival held in February, joined us. They were in full voyageur dress and warmly welcomed every guest who came through our door in both official languages. The COA held meetings all day Saturday. They were then scheduled to visit the hospitality rooms once they had eaten, and then they ran behind schedule. So here we are in a hotel. Toronto is the first hospitality room, Edmonton, Sherbrooke, and we were the last. So what happened was, spontaneously, Janice Philman and I took each other's hand and said, I think we better go and visit the Toronto hospitality room. So there is nothing like Janice Philman walking into a room and going, hello, we're from Winnipeg. And you're a delegate, and you are, and you vote, and you vote. So Janice and I went into the Toronto hospitality room, but what we did was we invited everybody. We invited all the Toronto delegates, plus the teams who were there to do the bid. We went to Sherbrooke, Quebec room, we went to Edmonton, and the Winnipeg hospitality room wound up with everybody eating desserts in the Winnipeg hospitality room. Though all of our desserts were elegantly placed on a row of tables, no one seemed to be going to them. So we needed to take action. Janice Philman and I got behind the tables and started cutting up the cakes, putting them on the plates, serving them to the delegates. It worked like a charm. At one point, we even had our premier, Gary Philman, serving drinks to the guests. We did what we needed to do to get the job done. Guests from all the other delegations noticed. We heard the delegations from Toronto on the phone going, get the mayor down here. Winnipeg has the mayor and the premier of the province. Get some important people down here. So we had a very, very successful hospitality room. Presentations were made early Sunday morning. We heard rumblings that Toronto had a lock on the win, but we hoped that we had the support now of the delegates from Sherbrooke, Quebec. I remember thinking at one point that I could not return to Winnipeg, having lost the bid and having just become mayor. Perhaps it inspired me to really try to influence the votes. So we made our presentation. I have to say to you, as Winnipeggers, you would have been so proud of the presentation that was made on your behalf. It was absolutely outstanding. Then we had to wait. There were 3 separate votes in the process. The first voting results were Toronto 17, Winnipeg 15, Sherbrooke 10, Edmonton 3. This forced Edmonton to drop out. Another vote occurred, and yet another wait occurred. On the second ballot, the votes were Toronto 21, Winnipeg 14, Sherbrooke 10. This meant that the Edmonton votes had all gone to Toronto and not to us. With Sherbrooke dropping out on the second round, we needed their support. Luckily, we had made some friendships, and many of them came over to us. The final vote occurred just before 6 p.m., yet we had to wait for the final decision. The adrenaline was just pumping inside everyone in the room. Our bid committee had done its best to make a case for Winnipeg, and just before 7 p.m., we headed to the room where the press conference was being held. The front of the room was set up with a stage and a podium. As well, a table and 3 chairs were set up on the stage where the actual signing of the Pan American Games bid document would occur. Towards the back of the room, there were 4 long tables, 2 on each side, and in the middle was an aisle. Each of the delegation teams sat at one of the tables. The Winnipeg table was behind the Toronto table. The bid cities were ushered to their tables. The room was jammed with media, which included a lot of reporters from Winnipeg. After that, what seemed like an eternity, Carol Ann Letherin, who was CEO of the Canadian Olympic Association at the time, walked into the room with the rest of the COA delegates. She approached the podium and began to speak. At this point, the media moved to the middle aisle and began to swarm the Toronto table, standing directly in front of us. I thought, oh my God, Toronto has it. A split second later, Carol Ann Letherin said, and the winning bid for the 1999 Pan American Games is Winnipeg. And so and suddenly all the cameras in front of the Toronto table went whoosh over to Winnipeg, captured Gary Filman and I giving each other huge high fives. I am sure you could have heard my screams of delight all the way back to Winnipeg. What a moment. Before you knew it, Don McKenzie, Barbara Huck, and I were up on that stage signing the bid document. While I was up on stage, a member of the Winnipeg media came up to me and asked me if I wanted to know the final vote. Of course I did. He took a small piece of paper and he pushed it towards me saying, "You will want to see this." And I did, and there it was. Final results. Winnipeg 22 votes, Toronto 21 votes. We had won by 1 vote. And at that point, all that mattered was we won. Thank you.